Hello. So I go to visit the website of a car dealership, and I can't see it. The website loaded fine, it's not a problem, but I use a screen reader to access the web. And this is what I get.
In Drive Masters, new and used car dealers, Ford, Honda, Volvo, Jeep, Opel, Nissan dealership London, Manchester, Leeds, Newcastle, York, Sheffield, Liverpool, Chester.
That's just the title of the page, because it's been crammed full of search engine keywords. So what happens when we actually navigate to the beginning of the page?
Web content, banner. Banner. Link image. Logo underscore Ford. Link image. Link underscore VT underscore K underscore R03. Link image. Logo underscore Honda. Link image. Logo underscore car. Visited. Link image. Logo underscore header underscore 2JPG. Link. Models equals Opel. Link image. Jeep logo PNG. Link. Models equals Opel. Link. Models equals Volvo.
So that's the navigation. You might not be used to screen readers reading content to you, but even if you were, that's not an ideal experience. It's not easy to understand. In the same way that if I play you this video without captions, you can see it, but maybe you don't really understand what's going on. You can't hear the voiceover. Now you're reading a page, and you've decided you want to be able to contact the people who run the website. So you go to click on that contact link in the navigation, but the button area is so small that it's really difficult to click on that link. Maybe you find using a mouse with accuracy very difficult, so it's even harder to click on that link. You get to the contact page, and there's a form with 3 fields. And you've filled out forms on paper before, so you kind of have an idea about how forms work, but this is your first time with a form online. And next to the form field is this funny little symbol. Is it a rune? What does it mean? Because we've somehow established that on the web, this is what we mean by required. But if you don't know that convention already, how are you to know that that's a required field? So first we couldn't see the page, and then we couldn't hear it, and then we found it hard to operate, and then we found it hard to understand. And these are all ways in which the web could be inaccessible to people. So last year, I wrote a book. I wrote a book about accessibility. That's what it looks like, pretty green book. It actually took me about 3 years to get it finished. But funnily enough, over those 3 years, accessibility didn't become a wide concern in the industry. So what is accessibility? So accessibility is the degree to which an environment is usable by as many people as possible, which would then make web accessibility the degree to which a website is usable by as many people as possible. So you might have heard sort of accessibility experts talking about this thing, inclusive design. So what is inclusive design then? So for example, if I have a shop, and that shop is raised above the pavement, above the ground, above the sidewalk. And so I think, well, I'll put some steps on the front of my shop. And then I put a ramp round to attach to the side of the shop, because I've realized that people with wheelchairs can't get up the steps. Parents with pushchairs can't get up the steps. So I've stuck a ramp on. It doesn't look particularly pretty, but it works. It gives people basic access. That is accessibility. But how about when I built my shop, I actually decided that right away I was going to put both a ramp and stairs at the front of the shop, so everyone has equal access. And of course some rails to support people going up and down the steps or up and down the ramp, and some edges to make sure people don't fall off, and some markings as well, so that people who have difficulty distinguishing between steps or where they begin and end have a little bit of extra help. That is inclusive design. Inclusive design is designing for everyone from the beginning. It's a mindset. So how does that translate to the web? So accessibility could be having these buttons to make your text bigger and smaller on your website because you've got quite a small font size there. Inclusive design is making that text a large enough size to begin with. So nobody is having to hunt down those buttons, which inevitably will be put behind some hamburger or ellipsis menu anyway. Because we know that's what happens. It's important to note that I'm careful in my language here, and I'll continue to be so. Usually, I refer to people as with disabilities. For example, my brother Sam has a disability. He is a person first, and he also has a disability. But I know that in many countries, people prefer to be referred to as being disabled. So I might say my brother Sam is disabled, because it's the world around them that disables them, or the world around you that disables you. And so when I start talking about these things, a lot of people, you see them kind of tighten up a bit and go, oh. When you try to talk about the spectrum of disability, it can seem very intimidating. It's an intimidating range of needs, and it's an intimidating thing to talk about if it's something you're not familiar with. It carries a lot of weight with it. But this shouldn't scare you off. There are four goals, I went like that, 4 goals, that we need to really face to help serve the needs of disabled people and every other person. Make it easy to see. Make it easy to hear. Make it easy to operate. And make it easy to understand. And this is why accessibility is not a binary. You will never achieve 100% accessible. So going back to our shop, we can say it's accessible to the majority of wheelchair users, accessible to people who require railings, accessible to people who need high visibility on the steps. We've tried to cater to a diverse range of needs from the beginning, but that doesn't mean that there won't be a need that surprises us. And that's why making our technology accessible should be our eternal goal. And we have a benefit here, because our work is never finished. On the web, we can keep iterating and improving what we build, and we can iterate the processes around building those products as well. So accessibility, of course, makes the biggest difference to people with disabilities, particularly people who would not otherwise be able to access the web. So 17.8% of Germans have a disability that provides a barrier to everyday life, education, and employment. More specifically, 7.4% of Germans have a disability that they identify affects their access to the internet. So that is not a small quantity of people. So you might have a visual impairment. You might have an auditory impairment. You might have a motor impairment, and with this, the spectrum is incredibly huge, not just including impairments that affect your movement, but also having low stamina for repetitive tasks, difficulty with fine motor control, or pain while moving. There's also motion sensitivity, having vestibular disorders or seizures, and cognitive impairments and differences which range enormously too, and can make up things like learning disabilities or contribute to low literacy. And you might be neurodiverse. You might see the world differently from many other people around you. These are not an exhaustive list of disability. There are no exhaustive lists of disabilities and impairments. Good accessibility is researching those needs and accommodating them with your design. I can give you tips and tricks for easy accessibility wins, but if you're always following tips and tricks, you will always be catching up. But I'll still give you some to get started. I have some basic things here for inclusive content and aesthetic design, but you're going to have to put some work in for yourself as well. So we need to design with purpose. We need to design in a way that is useful and has focus. First off, that really does start with our content. unless the content itself is accessible, nothing is accessible. So inclusive design for content often requires creating content for needs that are not necessarily the same as our own. And so in order to understand other people's needs, we need to research and test our content with a diverse audience. And the first thing we really have to do when we do this is consider who our audience actually is. Because you might say, oh, well, that person, they're not part of our audience. But that might be because that person was never able to access your site, your technology in the first place. When it comes to creating inclusive content, the aim is to make our basic content work for as many people as possible. But sometimes that's just not possible. Sometimes one particular format will not be accessible at all to people with particular needs. And so that's when we need to think about creating alternatives. And I have an example for this. So this is from my book, and this is an ebook. And I decided that I wanted to create, and this is the PDF version, a nice array of images that shows the potential differences in how people with colour blindness might perceive the same photograph. However, I didn't think about the fact that a huge amount of people read on Kindles and Kobos and e-readers that display things in black and white and grayscale. And so the photo looks exactly the same in all of the different things. And the thing is, I could have described that image in my text, but I didn't. And so my friend who sent this to me showed that he had no idea what I was on about. Here's a nice example, the freelance.tv site, where they interview freelancers. They interview them via video, and obviously people who are blind or have impaired vision may find the video hard to access, and so we can make that more accessible by introducing an alternative. This is a transcript. So the transcript can both be heard by people who have hearing impairments or are deaf, and also be read by people who are using a screen reader if they can't see the video as well. So your content may already be inclusive. You may already be planning and writing and creating it, because many of the considerations you use in order to make your content readable are also the same as what we would do to make them accessible. So here's some starting points on how to start thinking about it in a more inclusive way. First of all, use plain language and simple language. This will benefit everybody from non-native speakers to people with dyslexia. I think that for an English example, .co.uk is very good, .gov.uk. They have very short sentences. They're easy to read. This makes the text less intimidating, easier to skim. They have very clear headings, very clear links. Of course, the audience for your content will probably dictate how technical your language is, but generally it's good to avoid things like metaphors and really complicated jargon. And when it comes to jargon, we are great at that in the tech industry. For example, acronyms. If you use an acronym, explain its meaning the first time you use it. So here's an example by my friend Hugo Jaradel when he wrote about SAS on SitePoint. And he was talking about CLIs. Now, I have to admit, I didn't actually have a clue what a CLI was. I mean, I'd used one, but I didn't know that's what it was called. What's really great about his article is that the first time he talked about a command line interface, he then put in brackets, CLI, and then continued to use it further down the page. Command line interface might seem really obvious to all of you smart people out there, but actually if you look it up, if you try to look up what does CLI mean, it could mean a customer loyalty index or a cultural landscape inventory. So it's not necessarily as clear as you think, particularly for someone who's new. So when we're using simple language, we want to also explain the context. Because that ensures that if someone runs your content through a translation plugin, which I don't know about you, I'm very familiar with doing, it's more likely to translate into something that's meaningful. We want to give our content a clear structure and hierarchy. Wikipedia is a great example of this. It's not really beautiful, but it does have clear headings. clear lists, clear paragraphs. We all like to think that readers want to pore over every single word we write and maybe appreciate the clever words we use by getting out their dictionary and double-checking that they know the meaning. But really, we don't want to steal their attention in that way. We want to make sure that someone does actually genuinely understand what we want, and we give them the ability to get to our content, get what they want, and just go. We don't need to take up more of their time than is necessary. And how we create a clear hierarchy really depends on what we need the order of the content to be. And what I would suggest as a rule that I learned from journalists is putting the most important information first, doing a bit of a too long didn't read at the top of the page. So again, back to gov.uk. So this is the government digital service. When they're writing an article on preparing for flooding, the most urgent thing that someone is going to need is if you're about to be flooded. They don't need to know about how to prepare for flooding or getting insurance if they're slowly watching the water rising up at their front door. Using headings is a great way to segment and label our content. I think this is a really nice example that Wirecutter do. You can see really gorgeous, big headings. If you're skimming through that page, really detailed reviews of bike pumps of all things, you can understand what you're looking for and find the information that you need. Very few people are going to read a really lengthy review of like 5 different bike pumps. Headings aren't just a visual feature either. They work as clear landmarks for assistive technology too, when they're used with the semantically corresponding HTML. So this is probably about as much HTML as you're going to see from me, but just by using these simple, lovely little headings, you can make a big difference to somebody's experience. Links. Links are such a key part of how we get around the web, so it's important that we consider the text that we actually use for that link. We want to use descriptive linking. Links are vital calls to action, and they usually take us from one place to the other. So we need to be able to describe where we're taking someone, describe that destination, so they know where they're going to go if they follow it. So this could actually have a benefit on the length of our content as well. You can actually shorten your sentences often, because to get in contact with our team, click here. You could shorten that, get rid of the click here, just get in contact with our team, make the whole thing a link. People know what's going to happen when they click on that. And don't just say click here. Screen readers can also read links on the page out of context, because it's a useful way to get around. So you can just go through all the links if you're using a screen reader and have them read to you. So it's vital that those links make sense outside of the surrounding text. You don't want to listen to a bunch of links that are just going click here, 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 click here. That's not a good experience. Alternative content formats, they can really benefit people who can't access your primary format. So like I was talking about earlier with a transcript as an alternative for a video. But it also just gives more options to people who just would rather use something else. They would rather use text than a video. One of the simplest ways to meet a range of accessibility needs is through text. One of the basic examples of this is through the alternative text attribute for images. So this is just putting a little alt attribute in our image element and putting a bit of text to describe what the image is. When this attribute is provided, it can also be very valuable as a fallback, in case the browser can't actually see it. So this is very commonly seen in email, because an email often blocks images because images are used to track us and other harmful stuff. So The Economist, for example, they got their little logo, but if their logo image doesn't load, they've put some alternative text saying The Economist, so you still get the gist. It's just not as pretty. So it's great for a fallback. But we want to write meaningful text, because often it's not just logos of text that we're doing. And just because not everybody's going to read it, it doesn't mean we shouldn't pay attention to it. And it's very valuable for search engine indexing as well. So if all you could see is photo of my dog as a description of an image, You think, well, what's the point of that image? You don't know what makes that photo interesting. But if I say, oh, I'm working with my laptop on my lap, Oscar, the Husker Moot, has his chin on my knee and is giving me my laptop the side eye. That paints a bit more of a picture, doesn't it? Another real cute tip that I heard was putting a full stop or a period at the end of your alt text as well. That's a really great way of screen readers will just provide a little natural rest before they get straight on to the next content. We don't need alternative text for decorative images. And the best way to do this is to just include the alt attribute, but leave it empty. And then the browser will know, or the assistive technology will know to skip that image. It will just ignore it completely. And a good place to hone your craft of inclusive text is on social media. So, for example, if you use Twitter, you can go to the image descriptions, and when you go to and enable them, and then when you go to add an image, it will give you the option to add a description, and you can write a nice little description in there. And it's nice, it gives you the image big so you can see what you're writing about when you're writing it. Mastodon, which is the friendly Twitter alternative, actually includes the option to compose an image description by default. So that's a really good reason to join Mastodon. Transcripts are long-form text representations of video and audio content. So this is the transcript for This American Life, a very popular podcast. And one of the benefits that it's got here is that it also has like who's speaking. That's a really nice touch. However, at the top you can see it actually says, transcripts are generated using a combination of speech recognition software and human transcribers and may contain errors. Please check the corresponding audio before quoting in print. That's not a particularly inclusive mindset. So transcripts can make audio content accessible to people who can't hear the audio, but they can also be really juicy text versions, like adding those names as a little bit of an example as well. And it also makes it indexable by search engines too. So this is, again, another nice one. It's actually, not only has it got the names of the person who's speaking, but also the point at which the video is that they're talking, so you can jump straight to that point in the video. This is the Freakonomics podcast transcript. It actually contains links inside the text to the references and the things that they're talking about, so you actually get even more additional knowledge from it. We can use captions or subtitles for video content. So subtitles are these lines of text that are transcriptions or translations of the speech on the screen. However, closed captions, they're similar, but they also include that additional oral information, like sound and music that isn't speech, but is still relevant to the speech or its context. So this, I found a little example of snapping. And both captions and subtitles are useful as a text alternative to sound, and particularly useful to people who are hearing impaired or deaf. So captions and subtitles can be quite time-consuming to produce. So if you've sat there and tried to type up something that you're listening to, it's really hard. And captions and subtitles particularly compared to transcripts, because you have to specifically time them to the video content. So this is a really great free and open app called Joomla that's across, I think, Mac, Windows, and Linux as well. And it makes producing captions and subtitles pretty easy and very inexpensive. An alternative to providing your own captions and subtitles is to rely on auto-captioning that are done by kind of big video platforms. But auto-captioning is never going to be the same quality as captions crafted by hand. I mean, maybe do the auto-captioning and then edit it yourself. This is an example of a talk I gave a few years ago where I was talking about ad tech and advertising. And YouTube replaced every instance of advertising with appetizers, or advertisers with appetizers, which somewhat changed the meaning. I generally find that creating captions and closed captions and subtitles will take around 3 times as long as the video or audio is for me. So not the fastest typist, but I'm not that slow. But the time investment is always worthwhile. And captions are really useful for things like inclusive social media. Like, you see them a lot nowadays because, by default, social media will mute a video. So you need captions to draw people's attention in. And so this is a news story that was in my Twitter feed, but I could see what was going on without having to turn the volume up. And this was a really disgusting-looking advert on my Facebook page. And again, it was telling me what it was actually trying to advertise. So I hope I'm convincing you that good accessibility is good usability. And I'll come back to this later. One of the things that I hear so often is accessible websites can't be beautiful. They are all ugly. It's a myth, but sometimes I think it's sort of true. Because while itself, accessibility is not ugly, often the websites that we look at when we're looking to examples of great accessibility or the people who are talking about it, maybe the website isn't what we would consider to be aesthetically pleasing or welcoming to us. But the thing is, aesthetics are a vital part of usability. And I'm talking about aesthetics as design, not just decoration we sprinkle on to make something look pretty. Because ugly design is not accessible design. We are not making art with our websites. We don't need to make things wacky for the sake of being different. Beauty is a thoughtfully designed interface. Our sites aren't supposed to be a work of art. The beauty comes from the simplicity, the thoughtful decisions that actually aid our understanding of how an interface works. So here's some aesthetic principles from the perspective of creating actual functional interfaces. This is particularly important for people with cognitive impairments and will be valuable to people who are new to technology and new to the conventions that we use around the web. So we need to create interfaces that are presented where you really understand what's the purpose, what can I do with it, how do I use it, and what happens when I use it. And one of the ways we do this is through affordances. We use affordances to convey this information, these visual cues that help us understand how something is supposed to be used. So how do we know which of these we can press and which of these we can't? Which of these we can interact with? What do we expect to happen when we interact with them? We need to make sure we use buttons for buttons and links for links. You expect a button to execute an action. You expect a link to take you somewhere. Interfaces shouldn't be surprising. If you use a button that just takes you to another page, this is very confusing to people who have cognitive difficulties or even just think differently from you. Conventions. Now, we use conventions for a reason because they're easy to understand and thus easy to use. You are unlikely to invent the next new clever design on your site. So stick with those that already exist. I'm not being harsh, I'm just being realistic. We don't need to be different for the sake of being different. This is a part of designing with purpose. It is not about ego. Navigation along the top of a page. Lots of variety, but still it's a convention. You don't need to reinvent navigation. But don't just do it because everybody else does it. It's just... that asterisk drives me wild. Relationships. Relationships are key to explaining the context in aesthetics. So again, back to this example. How we actually know what a lot of these things are going to do actually depends on what it's next to. So if I have this, well, it could just be a box with some text in, but if it's next to the one at the top with just plain text, then maybe you think, oh, that's a button. Is that something interactive? Layout is another convention we use to make content relationships clear. We put important stuff at the top, sort of less important stuff at the sides, at the bottom, contextual things to one side. And that's why it's important to give space around those elements of content so that people can understand what those relationships are. And the screen is infinite, so you can use your space. You don't need to have competing elements. Don't underestimate the power of that single column layout. If it works on a mobile device, why shouldn't it work on a desktop? One of the tricky things that's coming up with CSS grids and Flexbox and things like that is this idea of the content order. We need to make sure that the layout order reflects the content order. So you might have a bunch of boxes, and you might decide, oh, I'm going to use grid to put them in a different order. You've got to make sure that you change that order, not just visually, but also in the document, so that people who are using keyboard navigation, perhaps, are going to see the same thing as they're navigating through on their keyboard. So that what you expect is A, B, C. What you don't expect is A in the middle, B on the end, and C at the beginning. And what if one of those items is completely off the screen? Width and line length. Very simple typography. But reading this is really difficult if you're having to swing your head from side to side like that. Simply putting some space around the outside, much easier to read, much less intimidating. Choosing typefaces, fonts, according to readability, then how suitable it is to your content, and never because this is a cool font I found on Google Web Fonts. An example of how important our choices can be. This is Heinemann, which was actually designed with people with low literacy and dyslexia in mind. These letter forms actually mimic how we first draw letter forms when we're learning to write by hand. Whereas Georgia, the well-known WebSafe font, is kind of more fancy and curly bits, much harder to read in contrast to Heinemann. And font sizes are everything. Small isn't tidy, it is just small. Layouts aren't there to be neat and tidy, they're there to be used. If your text is too small to be read, there is no point in it being there at all. And don't prevent resizing of fonts. Don't prevent people from being able to zoom in or out in the browser so that they can still resize that content. Color. So color is very valuable, but it shouldn't be a crutch. It shouldn't be our sole means to convey information, particularly when it comes to important information like errors in forms. This is what that same thing looks like in grayscale, that same screen. That's why this really cool dotted-y, dashed-y line is a convention that we see for spelling errors and typos, because the red color is not enough. We need another indicator. And that example also shows how important it is to use high contrast between the background and the foreground text, so it's readable for people who have differing visual needs, such as color blindness, a lack of clarity in their vision, long-sightedness, short-sightedness. Contrast like this also has an impact depending on the screen you have or the projector you have. On some projectors, that might be quite bright. On this projector, that's quite dark. One of the great ways we can do this is by testing our designs in grayscale. And this is something I learned from Jerry Cody. Then you can see the weaknesses if you rely on color. This is from the Simply Accessible homepage. And you look equally beautiful in grayscale and in color. You still have room to be creative when you're building things accessibly. This is a lovely job site called Limbo, and they really care about accessibility. I mean, some of the text is a little on the small side. The red is maybe not high enough contrast from the white background, but they're iterating. They care about it. They're trying. Just because you're not going to hit perfect on your first try, it does not mean you shouldn't keep iterating and keep trying. Because the thing is now, we're in an era where we can distinguish our products and our services and ourselves on the basic fact that we actually care about each other. The problem is the tech industry builds things for people like us. And when I say people like us, I'm actually less saying people like us and more people like you. We build things to scratch our own itch because it's easier to build products for people who have the same needs as us. That makes sense. We understand our own requirements and our own needs better than anybody else. So many of the successful products we have nowadays succeeded because they were designed to scratch someone's itch or eat their own dog food. And of course, our industry isn't so diverse. We have people that are largely similar ages, similar abilities, similar backgrounds, similar financial statuses, educational backgrounds. We end up creating products for people just like us, forgetting that many other people have different requirements from ours, or even requirements that conflict with ours. And to create more useful and usable products, we need to understand and care about those differing needs. Now, I mean, empathy is one way of doing it. The ability to actually share the feelings of others. That's what makes us good at creating products for other people. We can better understand their positions and create solutions that suit their needs if we actually understand what has meaning for them. But of course, empathy is going to be easier in diverse teams. Diversity comes from a range of ages, ethnicities, socioeconomic classes, personal backgrounds, genders, education levels, many more characteristics that give us each a unique experience of the world. And spending meaningful time with people who have differing needs from our own can help us develop a greater understanding of each other's needs. The greater capacity a team has for understanding their audience, well, obviously, they're going to make better products for that audience. Having a diverse team can also prevent us from othering our audience. Have you ever heard someone say stupid users or stupid clients? You don't want to treat the people who use your product as other. It's easy to be dismissive of people if we think of them as being somebody else. And this is particularly important when it comes to diversity and accessibility. And this also comes to things like user. Why are we saying user all the time rather than person or human? It's easier to respect someone if you treat them as just another human. So it's not user experience design, it's experience design. And as my partner points out, who else has users? The drug industry. That's why language is actually very important. It's no coincidence that in the tech industry we talk about designing for things like attention and addiction, all the while deliberately building products to addict you and engage you. That is not creating value. That, again, is thieving value. We need to actually build meaningful products that serve people's needs and value their time. I'm sure you've heard that accessibility wins are usability wins. I kind of said something like that earlier. But this is also a sales tactic. And I might say this to you because actually I don't think you care enough about the needs of people with disabilities to bother making a site usable for them. I mean, to be honest, I think that that's the approach of a lot of people in the accessibility community because they think that's the only way they can make you care. I think about that old phrase, the carrot or the stick. You're driving a donkey along and you either dangle a little carrot in front of him, give him a treat at the end, or you hit him with a stick to make him move forward and you give punishment for not doing what you want him to do. So these are related to the common tactics we use to sell accessibility. Make your site accessible or someone will sue you. That's a punishment, that's a stick. Make your site accessible and you'll get a bigger audience. That's a nice carrot. Make your site accessible or you'll get bad publicity. That's a scary stick, scary punishment. Make your site accessible because the usability benefits everybody. Lovely, tasty carrot. It's all very well talking about the usability wins, making your site more accessible, but let's not forget that for many, many people, this is not a case of making something more delightful and convenient an experience. This is not a case of making something more commercially viable. It's the difference between something working well or someone being shut out completely. It's more than just a minor irritation. We all experience minor irritations on the web, but this is making someone's life difficult or severely impacted even, maybe even impossible. Let me remind you again, nearly 18% of Germans have a disability. That's a lot of people you don't want to shut out. And not only that, many people with disabilities have more than one type of impairment. Impairments often intersect with other parts of our lives as well, creating new needs, and those intersect with our personal needs. So things like gender, age, abilities, ethnicities, all of these things intersect with our impairments too and make them either easier to live with or much harder. And this really emphasizes our need to see people as more than just a label based on a visible impairment. We are all complex beings. And some of impairments are temporary. They come and go. You might break an arm. You might have something that's seasonal. And then there's the 99.999% we'll all have more impairments in the future because we are all aging. I mean, me less slowly than everybody else, but... So how does that affect our use of the web? Our eyesight deteriorates, our hearing deteriorates, our fine motor control is affected. We have aging joints and muscles, we even get arthritis, our memory is affected, dementia becomes far more common as we age. These again correlate with making a site easy to see, easy to hear, easy to operate, and easy to understand. So what happens when we don't design for people who have impairments, including those brought about by aging? We sabotage our future selves. We need to think in the long term. We must equip ourselves to design for a diverse audience with a range of needs. How do we do that? We research and we educate ourselves, and we talk to people who have needs different from our own. We need to hire diverse teams. As Nat Dudley says, hiring a diverse team is not enough if you do not listen to them, if you do not have people with diverse backgrounds in leadership roles, informing decisions, making decisions. We also need to diversify our source material. I mean, if you look at who you're following on social media, you'll probably see a bit of a problem there. If all the books you read and all those people that you follow, all those blogs that you read, are all from people from a similar background, they're probably going to say quite similar stuff to each other as well. You should go and seek out diverse sources for yourself. However, I do have one that I think you should read. Because if I just gave you a list of everything that I follow and everything that I read, well then that wouldn't be completely diverse either, because you were just doing the same thing as me. Still, Technically Wrong by Sarah Wachter-Becher, this is a must-read for anybody in technology. And so we've researched and we've read and we've educated ourselves. Are we then ready to design things for a global audience? I'm not so sure we are, because we have to take care that we're not engaging in colonial design. And trust me, as a British person, I am very well aware of colonialism. Assuming that we know what's best for people, the people who are using what we build, when we come from different backgrounds than they do. It's what built the popular technology of the world today, designed for and used by wealthy people who look pretty similar, come from similar backgrounds, deciding what is good for us. These 6 men also happen to be in the top 13 richest people in the world. Oh. They're trying to kill my keynote. These men. Oh, any similarities here? Any familiarity? So what motivates them to build technology for us? Money, which they get from investors who want them to grow, so they all get more money. Systemic inequality is higher than it has ever been. The world's 8 richest people have the same wealth as the poorest 50%. Not only will these things not solve systemic inequality, they are actively contributing to making it worse. Because this technology does not recognize our needs, the needs of the rest of us. In fact, their technology is frequently harmful to us. It excludes us. If you sign up for Facebook, you have to choose, are you female or are you male? If you do not identify as either of those things, tough? Well, actually, you have to pick one and sign up and then choose another gender later. Because it's easier to profile people when they fit into neat boxes. Technology enables harassment. There's a reason why we have to fill out so many of these reports. Because abusive engagement is more valuable than no engagement. Their technology stops us from getting insurance and loans. This is a patent approval that Facebook has for approving us loans based on the wealth of our Facebook friends. Because it's more efficient to judge a person by the boxes we use to profile them. And their technology passes our information on to authoritarian governments. Because they already built the database of Muslim people. It's called Facebook. Their technology comes with strings attached. Facebook offered free basics, free internet to India that was restricted to accessing Facebook and a few other bonus services. And how much do these people care about the people they're building this technology for? Well, in response to free basics, India said, no, thank you. Mark Anderson, on the board of Facebook, said, anti-colonialism has been economically catastrophic for the Indian people for decades. Why stop now? And when people questioned whether Google was spying on them, chairman of Google, Eric Schmidt, said, if you have something you don't want anyone to know, maybe you shouldn't be doing it in the first place. Marginalized groups are more vulnerable to unethical technology than anybody else. The lives of marginalized people are the most at risk. And marginalized people do not have the time or the resources to seek out alternatives, if they even exist in the first place. And this is why we can't separate inclusive design from ethical practice. We don't just want to open up harmful products and services to everybody. The more we build harmful technology, the harder we make it to build ethical technology. It's harder to find the finances. It's harder to find the tools. It's harder to find people who want to build ethical alternatives when they can make loads of money when their company gets sold to another bigger company. And by reducing our choices in the technology we use, we sabotage our future selves. As my friend Hayden Pickering said, not everything should be accessible. Some things shouldn't exist at all. Because we build the new everyday things, and we have to take responsibility for that. People use the web and the internet far more than they use the things that they pay their taxes for. Our lives, our families, our communities and societies need us to build technology for more than just making more money for rich people. What is the carrot for doing the right thing? What is the carrot for building beneficial everyday things? Will we be rewarded with a better society for doing this work? And what's the punishment for doing the wrong thing, for building harmful things? Bad publicity, damaged reputations, being sued. I mean, all of these punishments are things that might hurt us as individuals. Are we punished for harming other people? Where do we draw the line? I can suggest one idea of where we draw the line. First of all, considering, could the technology harm me? That's a decision you have to make for yourself, okay. But when it comes to this, could technology harm other people? I suggest that that might be crossing the line. And you might go, oh gosh, but I'm just one tiny person. Don't take a picture of me next to this. I'm a cog in a tiny, big machine. The thing is, we're an industry made up of many persons. If more of us made an effort, we could have a huge impact. We need to remember that we are not our job. We are not necessarily the company that we work for. If you work for a big corporation who makes unethical things, no, you probably didn't make that decision. You probably didn't want to build that thing. But the time has come when we can no longer follow people without paying attention to the decisions that they're making. We can't defend our employers. We need to use our own social capital to be the change we want to see. So how can we be that change? Be the advisor. Do the research on inclusive and ethical technology. Make recommendations to other people. Make it harder for them to make excuses. Learn about how to make your discipline more inclusive and accessible. Be the advocate. Marginalised folks shouldn't have to risk themselves to make the change. Advocate for other people. Advocate for the underrepresented. Be the questioner. Question the defaults. Try asking a startup how they make their money. Come ask me later how I make my money. I'm not ashamed of it. Ask people, why did you choose to build it in that way? Be the gatekeeper. When advocacy isn't enough and it isn't getting you far enough, use your expertise. Say, I am the expert, and experts don't do this. Be difficult. Be the person who is known for always bringing up that annoying issue. Embrace the awkwardness that comes with your power. Call out questionable behaviour. Be unprofessional. Don't let anybody tell you that standing up for the needs of yourself and for others is unprofessional. Don't let people tell you to be quiet, or that you'd get it done easier if you were a bit nicer. Be the supporter. If you are not comfortable speaking up for yourself, at least be there for those who do. Remember that being silent is being complicit. Because speaking up is risky, especially when we're fighting entities that are far huger than ourselves. But letting technology continue in this way is far riskier. In the end, I'm not here to drive you. I don't have any power over you whatsoever. I don't want that power. I don't have a gift for you for doing the right thing. But you have that power for yourself. You can build yourself a stick and continue to beat yourself with it until the end of time. Or you can grow yourself a carrot and grow carrots for everyone. Thank you.